This conversation originally premiered at CFF on March 31st, 2022. Today's conversation is a no-holds-back one, where three of our festival-featured Canadian directors discuss their career trajectories and any filmmaking tricks that worked or didn't for them. Cheers, Sean Cisterna, Samantha MacAdam, and Shane Belcourt. Welcome to the fest.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadian Film Fest Cheers and Chat series. And today we're going to be talking about directing indie and what that's all about. And today we have an illustrious panel of film directors. My name is Sean Cisterna. I'm a first-time CFF filmmaker. I have a new feature doc called The Long Rider that I'm so thrilled to be bringing to the festival and to screen across the country. My doc is the true story of Felipe Leite, who in 2012 leaves his adoptive home of Canada, and this aspiring journalist travels on an epic quest to ride from Calgary to his family home in Brazil and later beyond entirely on horseback. So it's this crazy journey inspired by Ames Shifley's 1925 equestrian journey on horseback, and Felipe's, our protagonist's 8-year odyssey over 25,000 kilometers across 12 international borders, sees this young immigrant battle heat and drought and speeding transport trucks and nature's wrath and corrupt border guards all on his long ride home. So I'm really thrilled to be bringing that film to the festival. We have two other CFF alumni, though. Let's meet Samantha MacAdam.
Hi, I'm Sam MacAdam. I'm a writer-director, focus on comedy and horror.
Wonderful. Can you quickly tell us about your last CFF film and where audiences can find it now?
Yeah, Prom Night was a short comedy. It's a proof of concept, and we're currently developing the feature. It stars comedian Jerry D, Frank Spadone, and Marty Adams. Yeah, it's about three dads who find a positive pregnancy test and go on a mission to find out which one of their teenagers is pregnant on the night of prom. Where is it now? It's on the Bravo Fact, RIP, Bravo, their YouTube page, and it's also on Prime, Amazon Prime. Yeah.
Awesome. And then we have Shane Belcourt, another CFF alumni. And what was your last film that you brought to the festival?
Well, first, Sean, I'm happy that you gave us a longer synopsis of your movie, The Long Rider. I had originally thought when you were telling me, like, is this actually just going to be going through all the different rock riders? Who has the longest one? Who gets what M&Ms? I was like, okay, it's a bike rider. I'm with you. Thank God.
That's right.
That would be fascinating, though.
Yeah. But tell us about your film. Yeah.
So my name's Shane Belcourt still, and I made a movie a couple years ago with Christian Brune and Cara G, among some others, and it was called Red Rover, and it's a romantic comedy. You know, I'm 2 years out of pitching it, so I'm like, what the hell is it about? You know what I mean? I'm on to the next thing. But it's about a gentleman who is Christian Brune's character, who's wondering about, you know, like, if I got nothing left, you know, around here emotionally to live for on Earth, should I try to get onto this real life program of going to Mars One, if you recall that from a few years ago, of actually taking a one-way trip to Mars. And then, as luck would have it, he meets the love of his life before he embarks on such a journey.
Okay, why don't we go back to the beginning of our careers now and how we all got a start in filmmaking. So, I mean, when I think back to those early days after film school, I have a very shameful story that I'm not proud of. I recall in my fourth year of university, there were these postings on the film department wall of this PBS kids show that was shooting in the York University film building, and I took down all the posters so no one else could apply for the job, and that allowed me to get my first gig in the industry. I did props on this PBS kids show and worked my way up to directing by the third season. So I feel bad about what I did, but it did help me get a leg up in the industry and get some broadcast experience early in my career.
Shane, do you want to go first?
Samantha, I want to feed off what you say.
God, it's so convoluted because as you know, like, no one has one path. But for me, like, in the very beginning, I always wanted to do writing and directing, but I was just too scared shitless, to be honest, to like put myself out there and do it. And you know, this is a while back, there wasn't that many directors that were female, especially in comedy and horror. So I ended up getting into editing, and I would edit anything I could. And then I got into doing more trailers and promos until eventually I was like hitting a wall that I'm like, I need to actually make the films myself and not be promoting them. But a funny story, Sean, I was in the audience for Moon Point, like your film, like, I don't know, it felt like another lifetime ago. I was working for Cineplex as a producer, and my colleague wrote it. And for me, that was a huge inspirational moment. I remember it because I was like, I want to do this too, you know? So it's funny. It's a funny little tie-in. But yeah, the jump though. So I was editing for about a decade. I still edit. I don't consider myself an editor though. I only edit my stuff. But yeah, I ended up, when I got pregnant, believe it or not, I was like, this is a good time to change careers. No, but everyone's like, your career is, over. It's going to be put on hold. This is like 6 years ago. And then there was an open call to write the story for the animated film, The Nut Job. There was one, and I think 2 was out. Yeah, and there was a third one. It stars Will Arnett and Maya Rudolph, and it's not a porno, it's a kid's movie. It's called Nut Job. And
clarification.
Yeah. So, and it was the first time I ever really wrote something like a screenplay and a treatment in that way. But I was going crazy, staying at home on mat leave, and just, I knew in order to be the best mom and wife, I had to at least try for my dreams. So it was the first thing I did. And then it got selected, which was amazing. And that kind of put me on to the path of writing and directing.
Great. Wow. What a story. All right,
Awesome.
Shane, top that.
No, I mean, it's like I was in film school. I didn't, suppress other voices to to launch my career, Sean, but cool. I dropped out. I was like, most of my heroes dropped out of film school, so I thought I should as well. And I like to do it in the third year, right before you get your graduate degree, to really, just stick it in a little deeper to the parents. But no, it was like I got into rock and roll, and I did that for years, and it was a lot of fun. And I could never really afford film. Okay, now I'm showing how old I am. There we go. But I had to actually buy 35, and all the best students had money to get the 35 and all the toys to go with it beyond what was in the cage at York U. And I was just like, oh man, I can't afford that. This is just not my thing. And then when, like mini DV, again, how old I am, was starting to come out, and the GL2 and the XLS from Canon, and, you could kind of make your own things and cut on Final Cut 7 at home. I was like, okay, hold on a second. This is getting exciting again. And that's how I kind of got back into it, which is, I guess, one of the joys of the CFF Festival is it kind of really kind of promotes those kind of films and how those films are made in a great way. And so it's great to kind of see other people's things and then think about, it'd be like one day if I could, make a longer work. So, making feature films at sort of a super low budget kind of, it allowed me to discover not only a voice, but my own place in myself, to feel like it's okay to explore and experiment with film and to make mistakes. And it's okay, like it's actually part of the process of being a filmmaker is you try stuff. And, for this 6 minutes, it's just brilliant. That one moment, maybe not perfect. I could have done better, especially in an independent way where it's like you're not reshooting things and you kind of have to live with the results and rely on your wonderful editor to kind of find a way through some of the muck, and all the sitting with editors who are experienced, I'm sure you've been there, Samantha, where like, if you had this shot, this would have been, really magical. And you're kind of like, oh God, I'll remember that for next time. So I guess if there's anything I could say about I just enjoy it as a process, that's always like, no matter what stage you're doing or what new project, working in doc like I do, or working in feature narrative, it's every day is like, okay, how are we going to do this? And collaborating with everybody is the whole deal. And so that drove me back in, and I don't know, it's not as heroic as Samantha's. I didn't overcome anything. I guess I stuck with it when maybe the world was saying, just give up, dude.
That's heroic. That's like the hardest part I find in filmmaking. Like, especially I was coming off mat leave. So I'm like, oh great, here I am. I'm free from the kids. And then COVID. And I had like a deal in place for my first screenplay, Prom Night, with an American producer. And I'm like, this is great, and then it got kiboshed. But to keep going is a huge part of it, because you have that voice. You're beside, like, I'm in my basement by myself editing, a horror film, and I just did a commercial with Simu Lee, which was amazing, and I'm editing by myself. Is this good? I think it's good. But we have to, it's like, for me, it's podcasts and stuff like this that keeps my spirit going, and I think that's a big part of that people don't talk about, is like your inner voice, because even when you go on set and you meet actors or producers, all these people, we all have that voice that says you suck. So, it comes up and down at times, right? Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low. But no, it is heroic to keep going, because our industry isn't easy. There's, what I learned, I wish I knew sooner, was you have to make your own shit, because I wasn't getting the opportunities I wanted. And it's really vulnerable. It's that you're writing something and you approach actors and producers and grants, and it's all just from you. And if it gets rejected, you feel so rejected, right? So I think it is heroic. It really is. You have to you gotta just keep plowing forward, and it's hard. It's hard to go for your dreams, right?
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about tenacity. I think that's the word that encapsulates what you're saying. And, we all may have different skill sets, if you want to list editor and writer and producer on your resume, but having tenacity is something that, propels even beyond that. Just your wherewithal to keep staying in the industry is something that, I don't know, is it intrinsic in a person, or can it be learned over time, or what do you think?
I find it's actually, I guess I'll speak, for my growth in it. It's like, so much of it, you're right, Samantha, is or even that word, Sean, tenacity and following your dreams and sticking to it. But it's like the role of directing is almost like more and more about creating space and being confident for others to bring what they want to do into it. Like, as a young filmmaker, it's like, oh, I got it all. And then you don't, but you feel like you have to. So then you go into that with this kind of protective armor. Like, oh, there's no vulnerability here because I got it. Don't worry, grip over there, or electrician over there. I'm not a fraud, to your point, Samantha. Like, I got it all figured out. And the confidence comes, and you kind of, over time, where you're like, it's okay not to know. It's okay to discover together. It's okay to lean into the DP or the actor, or, on set or in the pre-production, to the production designer, where everyone's like, hey, here's an idea. Maybe not even within their silo of what their role is. You're like, actually, that's a good idea. So then you kind of think, well, yes, I have this vision to make something, or this desire or tenacity to see it to this stage, but it really then just becomes an opening up phase where you're creating space for collaboration. And that's the kind of the joy ultimately of it. Is almost like parenting, Samantha, you know what I mean? Like, you're kind of like, oh yeah, I have to create a space for you to flourish. And then through that, we're mutually flourishing, which is a different kind of sort of competitive or controlled kind of place to create something. So yeah, I would say it starts with tenacity, because it's hard to get started. But then when you get going and there's a bit of momentum behind you, and people answer your calls and you get shots at it, it just seems like, well, now it's this opportunity to create amazing relationships and collaborate with everybody. And that's, I would say, the thing that keeps me going more than anything else, is just the joy of discovery.
What about that? That roller coaster of budget levels, and independent experiences. So I've done films at various budget levels. Like, my last film was a movie called From the Vine. We shot it in Italy with an actor named Joe Pantoliano, an Emmy winner from The Sopranos. Yeah, he's great. That's on Super Channel right now. So that was a big cast with a multinational crew, financing from 2 different countries. So that's probably the furthest thing from, what I think of as independent. And so I'm thinking about my latest project, which was kind of born out of COVID. And when the world shut down, I had nothing to do. I was antsy. So I accessed all this footage from my protagonist, and, our small team of 2 or 3 people kind of cut it together. And that was kind of like the most independent thing. When I think of the word independent, and solo pops into mind. And so it's a very small solo team that put this latest project together. So jumping from, a bigger production to a smaller one, does that, do those indie experiences, I don't know, can you bounce back and forth between different budget levels and still feel like you're putting out great content? What are your most independent experiences?
Go ahead, Samantha.
Yeah, sure. So I think, the question was bouncing back and forth. I'm doing that right now. So I had like the high budget commercial with Simu, and then I have the short horror film for 10K that is like self-produced. But you know what, like to speak to the collaboration, I always kind of, that's actually where like I started, and what keeps me going is like my love for it, and also like I feel like I can't do anything else at this point. like that's what my skill set is. But to back it up a little bit, I guess when I was on mat leave all those years and like wanting to do things, I just listened to so many podcasts and took so many masterclass, especially during COVID. You're stuck. There was nothing you could do. I was writing or I was listening, and it was like to these giants, like Kevin Hart or Ron Howard. Ron Howard said like the number one thing he did is he'd always surround himself with experts to lean on, and like that to me hit home. And I realized that's what I was always doing. And in both productions, I still do the same thing where we bring on, and I have such like, especially for actors, I have such love for actors. Like back in the day, I wanted to be an actor myself. I was like a background actress and like the Skulls with Joshua Jackson and Gossip with James Marsden and Kate Hudson, until I realized I had no talent for acting. So I was like, probably shouldn't be an actor. But like, I always love to, whatever the project is, really lean into the actor. Because the way I see it is majority, like I haven't met one that hasn't been very prepared and they know their craft more, especially with comedy. Like with Jerry D and Frank and Marty Adams in Prom Night, I totally leaned on them because I'm like, I'm not no fool. These guys are way better in comedy than I am. So I let them do their thing. And in terms of budget, like for the horror film, which I just did with the amazing Jess Salguero, like you end up doing more work, I'd say. Like the commercial was amazing and fun because we got to really play. There was stunts. I can't like get into too much. It's going to come out soon. But, you had the luxury of really taking your time, and everybody has a role where they're doing, they're watching script continuity, all that. But when you're doing a short or low budget, you're kind of doing that all as well because everybody's kind of strapped. For me, like it's kind of the same process, but it's definitely more energy with a lower budget thing because I know that I have to be watching a lot more areas. I mean, I still do in the bigger budget, but it's just like the extra, I kind of am more like methodical. I really think a little bit more about everything. And like my personal experience, because I am an editor, usually I end up editing it. So if I screw up on set, I have a backup and edit how to fix it, because I know how to tell they say it's the last time you tell the stories and edit. But yeah, bouncing back and forth, I don't have too much of a problem, honestly. I just know now because I did a series for CBC Gem this summer. I did the pilot and a few other episodes, and then I did a proof of concept for Cream Productions. So like, I guess by now, because I've done it so many times, I just know that, hey, when I'm doing this production, I have to watch a lot more things than I usually would. So you just kind of have a different mindset. But with actors and stuff, it's exactly the same, where I just lean on them. And same thing with the DOP and everybody. I like them to all bring their knowledge because I know as an editor, it's such a different skill set and specialty that when everybody brings their stuff, I think it just elevates it. And I just let them go. And at the end of the day, I know I'm going to be in the edit suite and have the chance to mold the story. So I'm still protecting it, but I like to let people really go as much as they can.
Nice. And Shane, your most indie experience? Can you think of one?
Well, the two narratives I made, the first one, Tecarano, was for $15,000. And then the last one, Red Rover with Christopher Byrne and Kara G, another feature narrative, was made for $50,000, which I was rich. I was loaded compared to the first one. And those ones compared to, commercials or even some of these documentaries and documentary series that I worked on, where there's like way more gear. I did one commercial and the B cam was like the latest red. And we're like, oh, we don't need it because we're using the Alexa, today, like just like things that you would never have on a $15,000 or $50,000 film for the gearheads out there, but just give a sense of it. You're sort of, you have more toys, you have more time, you can have a bigger team to help execute a specific vision or a specific point in the vision. You allow more space for collaboration to take place because it's not like, hey, can you do this on the weekend? Can you add this to your already existing over the top schedule and fit my free thing in? I'll give you a couple bones to get it done. But with something that's budgeted, you get a bit more of that time and a bit more of that, their best effort because they get a bit more headspace to allow themselves to collaborate with you in the best way. And I was with Christian one day on Red Rover, and it was like, he was a little frustrated with me, and rightfully so. Like, there'd been in the morning, I'd missed a couple things, and the day was, it was raining. It wasn't a fluid morning, and I could feel his energy being a little bit bummed out. He's here to make a movie, and I'm like struggling with a crew of 5 people to get through making a fucking feature out on a beach where we don't control anything, and in that reality of the expectation, desire. And I was saying to him, like, you get to be the same actor on the $50,000 film or the $50 million film to a certain degree, but for me, the difference is actually quite stark, in a low budget thing. I'm also wondering, is catering coming? Oh, what about the Wasp? Did somebody bring the EpiPen for actor X? You know what I mean? Like, you're in that world. While at the same time, I'm like, okay, put the camera on my shoulder. Let's go. Oh, and late at night, you're also the one who has to download the footage. Like, so you kind of get into a different kind of low budget space, which is really just kind of taxing in a different way. And it really helps you love the days when you're with the bigger system. The flip of that, though, is with the bigger system, unless you have more clout or collaborators that know you, it's hard to turn what can feel like a Titanic going towards a boulder somewhere else real quick. Because there's a whole bunch of people, there's trucks, there's a whole bunch of permits. And unless you have the kind of clout to go like, fuck it, we're doing this, we're going over this way. Don't worry about it. Trust me, I got this. Over your shoulder, let's go. Everyone's going to be like, hold on. We didn't sort of allow for that kind of thing. But in a low budget thing, you do have that place to just kind of go like, hey, let's just redo the scene, scrap it. Sorry, this set sucks. Let's get out of here. Let's go over there. We're going to do it. Throw a light on by the window. Go, 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 go. And everyone kind of falls into that because that's the style of filmmaking. They both inform each other. But so it's sort of, the process of what's the difference about it. The difference is just really having access. But sometimes that comes with more freedom. So it's, which one do you want?
Basically, tremendously more stressful. It's true. I mean, it is, because you have to think about all those things. It's true.
Yeah. When I think about earlier times in my career, it was very difficult to find people and financiers and organizations to even believe in me, an unproven filmmaker. And I think many of us have felt the same way. And I guarantee we've all said the same thing. Like, why does Adam McGoyan get all the money? So many of our first films were born from that independent fire that we all have, and that just do-it-yourself attitude. And, like Sam, you mentioned that Moon Point, my first project, it was a movie that was rejected everywhere, but I still loved it. And I did a brave or stupid thing, depending on how you look at it, by using credit cards to finance the film. So I think that spirit of believing in one's own work, and when others don't, is what helps me in future projects. So that wherewithal and belief to get things done. So how have your early indie days influenced the films that you work and make today?
How's it influenced?
Yeah. So are there traits that you've borrowed from your indie world that you apply to your current projects?
Traits. Shane, you can go first while I'm thinking if you have an answer ready.
I mean, I kind of touched on it, Sean, in the sense that I would say fundamentally it's gratitude. There's at some point, like the tenacity, the chip on your shoulder, which kind of got you going in a world that said, look, no one needs your film. Nobody needs it. There's already so much content out there. It's already so noisy. Why would you even bother asking for people's time? And you're like, that voice you're talking about, the doubting voice that you're saying, Samantha, is there going like, why bother? But then there's this other side of just like, I don't know. I have to throw myself over this cliff. I just have to, and like they talk when you go up on heights, that nervousness in some people's gut is the feeling of like, oh, I think I want to jump. They tell you later, you know what I mean? That's where people are afraid of heights, is maybe because you're like, I think I want to know if I can fly. And you have that kind of part in you that you just can't explain. Like, why do this? You don't have to. The world doesn't need it, you think. There's no place for this in the marketplace or the audience or the festivals. Like, you're a nobody. And for me, coming from an Indigenous background, looking for those kind of stories and representation on screen years ago when it was not as, it was just amazing, this golden age right now, Reservation Dogs, the rest of it, Taika, Sterling Harjo, Dennis Goulet, this amazing moment. But, way back then, it's like, it's not really there. But you're like, well, I just want to see a part of me seen on the screen. I think there's something about just that desire to see your reflectivity back at you. And then you find, oh, hey, there's some other people who kind of enjoy this. So it's sort of like that part of what do I bring forward? It's like, not only is it the fearless desire to make something, to know that you're a part of a community of people you haven't met yet. You're at a festival right now, Sean, like people like your film touched me in these ways. It opened my mind. It's not just factual. It's not just this story or this political point. It's like something emotional. You're like, wow, there's this emotional space I get to explore, have reflectivity, have it back of me. And now it's just every day I'm like, I can't believe, don't tell anybody, but I get to do this for a living. This is crazy. This is crazy.
I don't know what it is about like hearing like your vulnerability and those internal thoughts, like, saying you're not good enough and why does the world need your work? It's very refreshing to hear that. It's therapeutic, like, because we all must feel the same thing and just not say it outwardly. So yeah, thank you for expressing what, those inner fears that we all have.
Yeah, it's not the 9 a.m. pep talk to the crew. Buddy, we don't need this.
No, we suck, but let's do it anyways. It's same kind of thing. It's touching on that, but it's like the grit, and like what's taking from the indie thing is really the grit, the passion, and wanting to break boundaries. Like I know it's been so talked about, but it is true. Like for me, like the films that I loved is like Step Brothers and Anchorman, basically any Adam McKay film and Will Ferrell film, and how many, like Mindy Kaling's like the one female I can name, Kay Canyon, who are doing those films, but they don't write and direct it. And the biggest thing with Prom Night was, they were shocked it came from me, right? Because it's kind of a raunchy and it's all dads. But I was like, why not all dads? Like I have John Hughes on my wall, like all his films. They wrote about young women coming of age, and it's all men, or Bad Moms is like all men, right? So it's like, why can't it be flipped? So that kind of was a little chip on my shoulder where I was like, you know what? This shouldn't be a topic. It should just be accepted. And so for me, like the indie, it's the love, it's the grit, but also it is to push through and make grounds, because like I don't know that many female comedic or horror directors. Now there a lot more are coming up, but like 10 years ago when I started, there was not that many. So for me, like my experience too, like it is the grit, because I'm trying to make Prom Nights like my second feature. I'm working on my horror first because I'm trying to get that bigger budget and attract the bigger actors and that sort of thing. And yeah, you have to have, it's the grit and the love. And for me, it's like, I do think like, yeah, no one needs this, but then I always think to myself, but I like it. And what I mean is like, I feel like I always tell people that are writing something, if you like it, if it connects to you, stick with it. And like, I cut with my gut, I write with my gut, and I direct by my gut as well. And you have to trust yourself. And, all of us, I think it's like statistically by the age of 40, we've watched 8 years of movie or something. I forget, a lot of stuff. We've watched a lot of stuff. So what I mean is all of us, everybody has a valid opinion, and, it's creative is subjective. So if you like it, go for it. And I think it was like almost 2 years ago now, COVID just blurs together, but I pitched Heartbeat Productions and I picked Point Grey Pictures Prom Night. And Point Grey, I was shitting myself because they have a film called Walkers, which is very similar. I thought was. And I was like, oh shit. Like when that movie came out, I grabbed wine, and I'm not a wine drinker, but I'm like, it's over. But I pitched them and I got amazing feedback, and the stories are very different. In Heartbeat Productions, I talked to producer Carly Haney, who's producing a little film called Monopoly. And she was lovely. And she was just like, this is a couple of years back. She's like, build your credits if you want to direct it, because they're interested in taking the script at that point. But at that point I didn't do series, and I've done quite a lot since then. But for me, I'm like, like before COVID, I had a deal in place with an American producer who worked with Vince Vaughn and Ben Stiller. And I was this close to selling it off. And every now and again, when I think about it, I'm like, but I'm not going to do it. And it's that grit from that indie world of like having it be your own. I want to sit on it, build up myself, go back and do it in a big way. Because why the hell not? In Canada, we are shooting and creating such great shit. And like, I want to do a blockbuster comedy in Canada. Like that's what I'm fixing to do. And I'm going to target those big stars. And Canadians are freaking hilarious. Like there's a lot of strong Canadians. And, you know, I want to get a big name, and the rest, I have no problem. Like there's tons of hilarious comedians in Canada. And I know we have the talent and the crew and the location. Like half the stuff is filmed here anyway. So a lot of the big Adventures of Babysitting is like I love that film. And I couldn't believe it was filmed here, right? A lot of my locations are the same as Adventures in Babysitting because the stories are kind of in line. But yeah, I think we could do it here. And the main thing that I take from my indie stuff is the grit and to push on, and still the collaboration, because I think especially in comedy, I want to get these big talented people not to silence them. I want them to come on and do the improv and mold the story in their voice. And, you know, they're big for a reason, right? They're talented. So yeah, that's my long-winded answer. I take basically the grit and the love. And yeah, that's what I take from the indie stuff to push on to the bigger projects.
Oh, sorry,
I wanted to ask you know, for Adventures in Babysitting, for that specific reference, classic. Do you have a blues club? Or are you going to redo the going to go see Albert Collins is like the guy, man. Massive Telecaster. I
came close to that. I was like a karaoke scene. That's for something else I'm writing. They have a dance scene, but no karaoke. But yeah.
Sorry.
You don't live without singing the blues or whatever.
Yeah. So funny. I don't know about you both, but I only want to direct. But even today, after like numerous projects under my belt, I'm still the one who's got to take that first step and fill out the applications, and put together a budget, write a draft of the script. And even if it's just to get the project going, and as it gains momentum, then I like to bring on more people who potentially share that excitement. But what other hats do you guys wear when working in the indie spaces besides directing? Do you write and edit and produce and act?
All of them. No, I was kidding, Shane. You could go if you want. But yeah, no.
I mean, like, no, I think it's actually a great question, Sean. It's sort of, you know, how do you, if you're a younger filmmaker or a coming up filmmaker or transitioning to filmmaking, sort of get started, you know, and that, like, how do you get a project going? You know, it's right now I do a lot of producing. One of my filmmaking mentors, Tim Southam, who does a lot of films and TVs and docs, you know, as a director. And he was just like saying, you know, like, hey, listen, if you can get into producing, it's just a great thing to have that knowledge of what's going on the other side of what you're in a sense battling against. Not really, but, you know, like that idea of how is money spent? What is a budget and how many days and why this? Why are we doing it this way? And what are the union rules and how does it affect you? And, you know, what about financing? How long does it take? You know, and why would a funder sort of ask to see a cast list that, you know, alleviates some risk for a distributor? Like all these kind of business things, which have such a dramatic effect on the creative and what you're able to do or limited to do or what you actually be hired for. You know, that's one piece of it, you know, and then the other one is just the practical nature of, you know, especially on the indie thing of what we're speaking about now. I mean, you just have no choice. Like there is a lot, people will come in at certain points and help you, but you don't have the kind of infrastructure payments to keep people engaged for long, right? For the whole duration of the getting the capital and the interest going phase. Now you're in pre-production. Great. People can come on, get hired, give you a couple weeks production. Everybody loves production. And then post, you know, Samantha, sorry, we have no money left. Can you do this for less than we ever budgeted for because we blew the budget in the shooting? And then sometimes as a director, you know, you're kind of like, oh man, maybe I have to log footage. Maybe I have to sync footage. Maybe I have to prepare, do some AE, assistant editor work for the editor who's going to do it. Or maybe the editor is going to go to point X and be like, sorry, I got another gig and I got to, you know, and you're like, okay, well, give me the hard drive back and I'll final touch all the edit points, you know, and maybe I'll be the one who will have to go through the sound and sort of pick out some sound design elements to push it to the mix phase because I only have one day. So you're kind of like, you wind up in the independent world actually really super preparing for a gun for hire director because you're forced to do all layers of production, including the release for a festival, the trailer, the poster, the EPK, the website. Like you don't go like, oh, well, who's getting paid to do that job? Well, it's you know, so you just have to kind of be this, you know, this master of the spectrum of making a work, whether it's a short or a feature. You kind of go through the whole spectrum spectrum. And at the end of the day, I think that's the part where you're kind of like, so how do you approach from that place? Well, now you know, I never want to produce. I never want to do marketing and promotion. You know what I mean? Now you're kind of like, I need to target those people because I've learned that this is a major area of weakness for me, or an area of need, or in my case, some sense of repulsion. I never want to build another website for as long as I live, man.
And Sam, you mentioned editing is in your skill set. Do you use these other tools to inform stuff that happens earlier in the process?
Yeah, I mean, what Shane touched on is true. Like for indie stuff, you end up kind of doing everything. And I don't know. For me, I don't. Like it's exhausting. I also have to clone myself, but it's not the worst because editing for me, I feel is the last time you get to tell the story. So I kind of don't mind that I get to really get in there and do it. Like I'm doing it right now in the horror film, and you switch out a certain score, the whole vibe changes. So I like to be able to do that. But no, I hate producing. I absolutely hate it. But yeah, especially the horror film we just did, like both things we shot in my house. And this summer, because of COVID, it was a conscious choice. I'm like, let's do it in our house because I wanted to make sure that we had a nurse. It was 10K, but we had a nurse, we had proper food, we had to take care of everybody. Right. So I knew going into it. And I find the biggest thing is it takes longer. And like Shane was saying, when you get onto a job where you're just directing, like I'm just directing, like that's it. Like, it feels like very, not easy, but I feel lighter because, once you've produced, I produce, write, I co-produce. I had an amazing producer on a horror film I worked with, and for prom night, but you end up doing a little producing and casting as well and writing. I wrote both of mine because again, like I found starting out, the only way I was able to get hired is to write it myself and then apply for grants. And that was me applying for all the grants in the start, because even getting a producer when you're brand new, they're not going to put all that legwork in, so, and no one's going to sell your project as much as you will. That's how I figure. So I'm like, I might as, I got to do it. And then, and then editing as well. So yeah, I end up doing pretty much all the roles at some point or another. And then, we enlist who we can, but I'm always very conscious too of people's time. I think, starting up, I did so many free gigs that I don't ever want to do that. Even my 10K film, I made sure that everybody was paid. And we're lucky enough that I was able to get the grants. It takes a little bit longer because I'm getting grants to pay people. But even with those little budgets, you still end up doing everything as well. But it's good skill. It's not wasted. When you get on set and you're just directing, it's like you are mega prepared.
Nice. So I'm at a film festival currently in South Carolina at the moment. I'm in this film lecture hall that the festival was nice enough to put me in to get a quiet room to talk to you. So when I think of film festivals, like both CFF at home and other festivals abroad, it's that expansion of one's network and meeting other industry professionals and maybe fans of your work and patrons of the arts in these amazing communities that our films are lucky enough to take us to. So I think that expansion of a network has allowed in the last couple of years for projects to start coming my way rather than me self-generating kind of my own work. So what has served as a stepping stone to help elevate your careers as your time has gone on, like in financing or distribution or even a producer coming on board? How have those stepping stones elevated your work? Shane?
I think it kind of goes, it's a two-world kind of perspective, the way I see it. There's the aspirational world, like of who would it be great to know, because then that person might be able to trigger this. And if I knew that person, they might be able to move some levers to do this and that. Those festivals are amazing for those opportunities to network. But I think, the part that really matters is that you're a part of a community, and it's the horizontal thinking of like all of us together doing things, and that perspective of it's not networking, it's just relationships, not for the sense of some kind of transactional relationship, which is obviously gross and you feel those really quick. Everybody does. It's just sort of like, I actually like to watch Canadian movies. And by doing so, I'm like, hey, how did you do that? Or, hey, I saw you in this thing. And now you're just generally just somebody who likes other people's work. And you have a more natural engagement with people. And it's sort of the first thing you think is like it's a relationships of and if I get this, then that. Maybe a young filmmaker, film school, the sort of like I need to get something. I'm in a pursuit of something. And it's really just not about that. Eventually you kind of settle into like, oh, the reason why everyone's pretty casual hanging out at these networking things is because they know each other. And that's the thing I would say more so than anything. So those are at festivals. Like the other thing too, I found too, those aspirational relationships, if you're just real, which is the hardest thing to be, people tend to be like, hey, you're cool. And then when you're kind of like, it's normal to be nervous, but when you're kind of like, hey, I got a game, I got a thing, then it's sort of like, nobody wants to be sold. We're not buying and selling. We're a community.
Sam, can you identify a stepping stone that from one project to another that might have elevated your career?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I can hear my daughter's sad because I didn't say hi to her. But she'll survive. So like echoing everything Shane said 100%. And then like on top of that, I guess I'd say like, for me is I try to get myself around masters and like, people and masters tend to be names, which I don't like name dropping. And if you meet them and they're jerks, I wouldn't try to make work with them. But thankfully, like all the people that I have met in different initiatives and stuff have been lovely. And it's true, like Kurt Smeeden, who is a creator of Children Ruin Everything, funny, lovely human, told me to keep in contact with the Heartbeat Productions and Bronze Studios with someone else. I met some people from there because it's true. Like the more that I get into it, I'm like, in order for them to give me money to make something, they have to know you, right? They're not going to bet on you without knowing you. So community is huge. One major thing for me was like there's been several. It's all through COVID, which has been like around the COVID time. The first one was Just for Laughs. That's where Prom Night actually had its premiere, and it was in Kevin Hart's LOL showcase. I met Kevin, so I was like, oh, filmmaking is easy. My first comedic short, but that was a huge one because when I met Kevin, like Mr. Hart, he was saying, this forces the world's hand, and just knowing him and saying that, like he put me on his website, like he tweeted my film. That was a big thing. People took note because Kevin Hart's a master, right? And then another one was a Netflix diversity program I got into that, and another one was a CMPA private writing room. Netflix, I met a bunch of people through there, and I got poached to do my first CBC series from my profile they saw on Netflix, Banff Diversity Program. CMPAs, I met amazing Jennifer Morrison, who is an actress, but she's also a director. She directed Euphoria, and I met Ashley Levinstein, who's a producer at Braun, and they talked to me about pitching and community again. So it's like I'm echoing Shane, and the only thing I could say on top of that that I found really helped was bigger names because people take note, and just that's what I found really helped me, and the initiatives and just getting your name out there. And I hate saying building a profile and branding, but I mean, I do put stuff on Instagram and stuff because people are looking. That's what I learned too. Like a lot of these initiatives, a lot of them go to your Instagram. So I'm like, God, I got to get with it and learn how to tweet. And I'm horrible at that stuff, and I hate doing it. But that's where I look too. When I look up at a makeup artist or a crew, that's where I go, right? So yeah, it's like necessary means. But yeah, it's building community. And then the only thing I can add to that is I definitely try to find the big ones like Whistler. I was part of the Women the Directors program as well. And that was huge. Again, I met so many people from that. And yeah, it is a community because when you're building a film, like when you're doing a film, the biggest thing, I think it was Kevin Hart said in his book, is you got to build an army. And it's a saying, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. And that's what I found. I could go really fast by myself. But if you want to go far, you need like an army of people. So I'm trying to like meet producers internationally and here. It depends on what films you want to make, right? And I want to do bigger blockbuster kind of stuff. So I'm trying to build the community and also reach out to people that you love. Like, and I absolutely love, this is a good example, Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Love that show. I don't know how they're still alive in this the way the world is now in terms of what the show was. But like in terms, there was bad people doing bad things basically, but they flipped it and it's still growing great. And I did a master class with one of their seasoned directors or regular directors, Heath Cullen. And like, again, it's community, you learn from him. And I think for me, that's the biggest thing, is just you building your network.
Yeah, that's great advice. I don't know about you, but I have a love-hate relationship with the Canadian industry, as I'm sure most people do. Our films don't often get supported by the financiers or by the distributors in the country at the beginning, like when you're first starting to pitch. And at least in my case, I somehow have to go out and find the money, attach cast, make the film. It might find success on the festival circuit. It turns out great. And then they want to get on board afterwards. And despite coming back time and time again with a quality film in development, it's like repeating the same process over and over again. It's like I'm Sisyphus, that Greek character who pushes like a boulder up the hill and then it rolls back down, and you got to repeat the same thing over and over again. So how has creating films in Canada served you or worked against you?
For some of the films, there's a fun to try to create a blockbuster thing. You create a script, you put it out in the marketplace, and it can take place in anywhere. But then there's a lot of personal projects that, the history and the characters only exist here. And so for me specifically, the things that I'm working on are from here. And that's the thing that I love about my community that I'm a part of. That's the community that I want to remain a part of and tell those stories. Other times we can do things that are beyond that scope, and that's always exciting. Who doesn't love to have the LA meeting? But but doing things here, it comes with all the Canadian weirdo things. It's a small network, we don't have all the money and support. I kind of look at it through that lens, from the sense of, those rejections or those frustrations are built in just because of a limit. We have one studio. We don't have blocks of them in LA with, golden towers. We got one government studio you can go to finance your Canadian picture. So what are you going to, how competitive is it? It's not, sometimes you could see it as favoritism, and I understand that for sure. But at the same time, it's sort of like, well, there's thousands of us trying to get such a small little piece. And the only real way out of that is things like the Canadian Film Festival and other places that try to build a uniquely Canadian audience. So Samantha, I want you to kill your next film where it's like, hey, a Canadian blockbuster. Why don't we have Canadian. Why don't we have what Quebec has, where it's sort of like they go see their own. And by doing that, it's like, well, that little pot where 1,000 of us are fighting for 10 spots, there's 1,000 of us because the pot's bigger fighting for 100 spots. So things like, Warren Sonata and others who are really pushing that so inspirationally of we come from a community of story and we should push our audience to come to our things. Cause as you said at the top, Samantha, it's fucking great, and to kind of celebrate that. And there's always going to be parts where, for who knows, whatever reason, it won't happen. Then the flip, somebody calls the other day and is like, hey, let's work on this thing together. You're like, what? Okay. Those days happen also. So I kind of just balance it off that way.
Samantha, Canada, do you have a love-hate relationship, or is it purely positive like Shane?
Sorry, it's love-hate. It is. And I find the biggest thing, especially because, again, my experience, because traditionally they weren't looking at women a couple of years ago to direct, right? So I was kind of lying in wait and watching things and trying to figure out, well, how did this person get this or this person get this? And I find in the States, there's so many stories of it almost feels like a club or cult where, they do one short and they get it. And it's but here I feel like you have to do so much more, right? And I think we're just more cautious as Canadians. We're more cautious with certain things, which I understand and in many ways appreciate. But with the film industry, it's tough, and I understand it though, the flip side of it as well. But I just feel that we are a little bit extra cautious. If you want to do a movie of the week, it's okay, well, how many movie of the weeks have you done yet so far? And it's none. That's why I'm trying to get a movie of the week, that kind of thing. But where I feel in the States, I've heard stories and talked to people that seem to have gotten it so much faster, right? So that's my beef in terms of the green lights and the gatekeepers. A lot of that has started to change. It has, and even before, where it was if you did 30 minutes, it had to be a single camera. It was so. But now I find it is starting to change, where they're looking at your skill as a director a bit more than what have you done, or even like genre. Before, I couldn't say comedy and horror. Thank God for Jordan Peele, because he's like the main example I have, setting the bar real low, comparing myself to Jordan Peele. No, but like, he's someone who's doing both, and it's valid because there's completely different methods and ways and of telling stories. But yeah, I feel like in Canada, I feel it's like we make it harder. Like the gatekeepers are a bit harder on us, and I think maybe there's more fear because, like Shane was saying, there's not as much of it to go around. Maybe that's what it is, but I find it's a bit harder. I feel like in the States, the people I've been able to book meetings with big people in the States easier. And I don't know exactly why. I think, yeah, maybe it is. They just this is more there. So they have less to lose. So that's my beef with it. And other than that, but yeah, like the horror film I'm telling is actually set in Toronto. And a great example of that, again, saying like we can do it here and make it great, is Yellow Jackets, which was a series that just came out. It's very much in the same vein as my horror film that I'm working on. And that was set, like the synopsis says, an Ontario wilderness plane crash. It's like amazing, right? So, and I think too, there's always been this stigma that Canadians aren't cool and, that kind of thing, like compared to the American filmmakers, right? But I feel that's changing too. I do. I think there's been a lot of movement happening, so it's an exciting time. But yeah, that's my only beef. I just feel like it's harder to get things moving in Canada for whatever the reason. I'm not really sure, versus the States. That's why I'm looking at those co-productions right now to get it going. And then hopefully in 10 years, I'll be in a position that I could just do stuff, here and not have to worry about it.
Wow. Well, I've definitely learned a lot from both of you. So thank you, Shane and Samantha, for your wisdom, your nuggets of inspiration. And it's been a great hour. I can't believe it flew by like so quickly.
It did.
Thank you again.
With you, Sean. That was lots of fun. And you too, Samantha. I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Yeah, thank you both.
Thank you, Sean, Samantha, and Shane, for sharing these terrific tales and tips today that are sure to steer us in the right direction when it comes to directing indie. This chat was produced by Jen Pogue, Ashley Rains, and Bern Euler for the Canadian Film Fest. Music by Brett Higgins. The Cheers and Chats podcast is co-produced, edited, and sound mixed by Ryan Gordon. For more info on the fun happening now at CFF, find us at canadianfilmfest.ca.